Good evening, everybody, and welcome to StatCheck episode 128. This is our Pariah Nexus meta roundup, and as this is in the description, we saw two other channels post that they were doing Balance Dataslate hot takes, and we're like, well, we should probably get this in just before it drops on us in case we're too late for it. So fingers crossed, it's either this week or next, otherwise we'll look really stupid and we'll have to do a brief update to these, but we'll just refuse to acknowledge it existed. The next 2 weeks of data, if that happens, aren't real. I hope everybody's doing well on this fine day. We started at 11 o'clock. Everybody's shocked. It's because neither Jeremy nor Anthony are here, and that's usually the people who are making us late. You could read into that however you want. Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ines. It was funny because very quickly there, I thought I was actually going to be late to the show today because a train just never showed up. But it worked out, and we were on time. And then I looked at the clock, and we were early, and I was like, "What is going on? And what nonsense is this? This isn't how StatCheck is supposed to work at all." I've been playing Imperial Guard, trying to get ready for this team's match that I have on Friday with an army I've got like 2 reps with. It'll be great. It'll be fine. Everything will be fine. I don't know what's going on. Emperor's Children look good. I've been planning too much stuff for this move to Boston, so I haven't been paying attention to anybody talking about a potential slate or videos coming out about a slate coming up. So somebody today told me we were doing this review episode, and I was like, what? There's a slate? Possibly soon? What the fuck's going on? What year is it?
Look, Art of War and 6++ both posted, what do we want from the upcoming Balance Dataslate? And I was like, well, let's make sure we're not late.
That's perfectly reasonable.
So what we'll be doing this week is the usual. We'll be going through the last 3 months of data. We'll be talking about how each army's been doing, the general trends, what we're hoping to see out of a Balance Dataslate in terms of, do these armies need buffs? Are these armies doing fine? So that we have a point of reference when the Balance Dataslate comes for whether we think it was good or bad. As always, that is what we are aiming to do at this point in the metagame. We'll also be talking a little bit, I'll talk about my Manchester run, and we'll talk about the last 2 weeks in stats, because obviously we did not have stats last week. And then we'll be doing questions at the end, so we'll have a nice normal one. I don't know if we're going to keep it to the tight 90 because we've got a tier list to make, but yeah, we'll see how this one runs away. You should have your regularly scheduled Anthony back next week, but he is currently having something internet something going on in the background, and also we're doing a tier list, so he just doesn't want to be here. We will preserve any and all Pyrrha questions for him for next week if you ask them in the Discord. With that said, shall we do how's your week been, Nathan? What have you been up
to? Mostly moving to Boston logistics, to be totally honest. We have an apartment now, kind of locked in, which is good, starting April 1st, which will be nice, but it's just me moving initially, so it's just going to be me living the most stereotypical bachelor lifestyle possible, where I own exactly one piece of fucking furniture.
Is it a Warhammer table?
It is not. It is a bed. I will own a bed for like.
Well, you should have different furniture then, Nathan. Priorities.
True. I'm currently working on trying to get like a traveling hobby thing to bring with me so that I can still paint and stuff while I'm in the Airbnb and then in the very empty ass apartment, so that I can pretend that I have a life outside of work for like a few months until the rest of our stuff arrives. I don't think you're going to do that. I don't think you're going to have a life outside work for a few months, Nathan. That doesn't sound like a thing. That's fair too. I still try to find time to play 40K. It'll just be on TTS, which is what it really is now, which is fine. Hit me up for a TTS game, I guess, starting in like April, when I have nothing better to do in all my evenings. How about you, Ennis? How are you doing, bud?
Yeah, I've been doing reasonably well. I was at the Manchester Super Major this weekend. We had Dan from Red Dragon and Scary over, crashing with us in the Airbnb. So there were 7 of us, 5 of us down from Scotland, and we had the opportunity to, hang out and play some Magic and do all those kind of good things that go along with being in a tournament. I managed to go 5-0 in the Swiss portion, dropping a sum total of 4 points, with a 496, which was good enough for 3rd place in the Swiss, which is hilarious. It was a really, really, really interesting run. I was playing my Host of Ascension list, 155 model Gene Circles. My round 1, I played against a double Northern Tyranid list in a Simulation Swarm. In my game 2, I played against Liam Keane from the Welsh team, who was playing Aspect Host. In my game 3, I played against a certain Mr. Scary. We decided that playing once in a month wasn't enough, so we should play again 5 weeks later. So I got my vengeance on him for LVO and took him down in round 3. Scar ended up going 3-1-1. I believe he drew his last game against Necrons, where the game ended with him scraping a draw off the back of a Venom killing a Catan in combat.
That's just rude. That's like the rudest way to kill a Catan.
He didn't get very unlucky to be at the point where he needed a Venom to kill a Catan to draw the game.
Sure.
But that doesn't matter. Context is, as they all say, for cowards. Game 4, I played against... Oh, that's bad. Tyranids again, I'm pretty sure. It was a more traditional invasion fleet list, sort of a 2 of everything list. And then game 5, I played against Solar Spearhead, which was really interesting. Lots of dreadnoughts running around. Unfortunately, my army's got a lot of OC and that army doesn't. So I mostly just stood on a bunch of objectives and rolled charges at people and got to stand on objectives. It was pretty great. Yeah, so that was awesome. Bruce Duffy, one of the other Team Scotland guys, and a very good friend of mine, also managed to make top cut. He scraped in at 4th place playing Anthony's Creations of Bile list after finally just stopping changing the list. He just played Anthony's list and weirdly managed to go 5-0 with it, dropping 12 points total. Yeah, took down Ben Jones from Vanguard round 5, which was really, really awesome. He did end up losing to Josh in the Josh Roberts of Everything fame in the semifinals. In a 5-point game. I, on the other hand, had the dubious pleasure of playing Alex Harrison in the semifinals in the only game I've ever had to complain about in my life, which I want to quickly touch on a little bit here. So we end up having a very difficult game. Both of our armies are quite movement intensive. Alex is playing an army with a lot of models, a lot of combat stuff, advanced charges, pivoting vehicles, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm playing an army with a lot of models that has a lot of activations and all that kind of thing. And we both ended up clocking out this game around about turn 4. And the policy you can see events is hard dice down, game scored at the end of turn 4. Now, I would say that having played this game got quite heated between both of us, and it was very, very, very difficult to play. Probably in my 10-year competitive history, the least enjoyable game of Warhammer I've ever played. And I think it's important to say things like this because there are people in the community that have reputations for being, poor sports or for having issues. And Alex is one of them. And I choose to interpret this game as him being still like that. And I think that's an unfortunate thing to have to say, but this is the only game in my career that I've ever sent a message to the judging team afterwards and complained about the game because I felt like Alex conducted himself in an incredibly unsportsmanlike manner, weaponizing the clock and being incredibly rude. I like to give a couple of examples. I at one point called him out for some movement where I thought like he was going too far, and at that point he decided to say, "Well, yeah, but you've been incredibly loose up to this point as well." And I'm like, "Well, dude, if you thought I was being loose, mention it at the time." It was very difficult to kind of be on top of it in that position because, when you're sitting there trying to have, a game with someone and you see something going unfair, and then when you try to call them out for it, they jump on you backwards. And then the ref at the side of the table doesn't say anything, is just kind of standing there. And, no disrespect to the ref who was at the table, who I'm not going to name. They were very clearly out of their depth in the situation and were not doing an amazing job of handling a very difficult situation. Now, I was going to lose this game anyway, and I really don't want this to come across as sour grapes. Alex went first, rushed me in Search and Destroy, and I came out and I did not do a good job of dealing with it, and I drowned under the pressure. And that is 100% just what was going to happen in that game, regardless of whether I'd had time. We calculated out the score towards the end of the game, and I lost by about 16 points. That's not the score we ended up submitting because we submitted at the end of 4. But, I was not getting out of the game in the situation I was put in. I don't want this to come across as, hey, I lost to Alex and I'm bitchy about losing. I am annoyed that this game was unpleasant to play. I did not have fun. He made it difficult. The time that at one point I said to him, "Hey, I'm going to I need you to start measuring stuff properly," and he went, "Okay, well, I'm going to make you do the same." And I'm like, "Okay, I get that, but I've been doing it properly the whole time. You can't just start getting angry with me because I'm asking you to stop moving models when you're putting them in place and then remeasuring, putting them back places." There was a lot of stuff with poorly explained intent. There were a couple of heroic situations. I gave him a bunch of takebacks as well in the early games. I probably, knowing Alex's reputation, shouldn't have, but you like to give someone the benefit of the doubt at the beginning of the game. But then every single one of those takebacks felt like it was weaponized against me. That's one of those things where you give someone a take back and then they take it, and then next time they give you a take back that's relatively small, and then you try to stop giving them take backs. And like, well, I just gave you take backs. You're like, oh, it's not the same car. So it's difficult. And I really want to put it out there that this game is not normal. It's not the game that someone should expect. And it's the kind of game that should be handled properly. Now, I don't want to go into the full details of everything. Obviously, it's not my place to say, and I don't want to say that Alex was like, I don't necessarily think Alex was cheating at any point in this game. I just think it was an incredibly difficult game to play, and it shouldn't have been. I am not traditionally someone who takes a long time to play my games, but when your opponent makes the game willfully difficult, this game took 2 time, hands down, without a shadow of a doubt. And that was the game ending on 3 with me rushing through my last turn to get through like some semblance of a turn 4, which is really difficult. To ask how does someone weaponize the clock, it's things like, okay, I'm going to start moving my models, and then you question every coherency pile-in I make, right? You're like, oh, I don't think you're going closer there. Oh, I don't think that guy's in range. I don't think that guy's in range. I don't think that guy can go there. And it was just that at every single instance of every movement that I made that was remotely relevant. And that was really hard to manage as I'm playing a horde army. I'm not saying that I was playing it perfectly. When you're moving that many models that quickly, some things are going to go slightly askew. Of course they are. But it's very difficult to manage that while the clock is on the other side of the board, or when like at some points when you can't just be passing the clock back and forth. I would also raise up things like during the early game we weren't passing clock back and forth for saves, and then very suddenly on turn 4 when Alex was getting low, we were passing the clock back and forth for saves, which is like, I always think that's a little bit rude. If you're doing things one way and then you change it to another, it's difficult. Now, I don't say this at all to try to take away. Alex played this game well. He took his approach in. He knew what he was doing, and he applied the right kinds of pressure to make it sure that when he went first, my list did not have a good chance of getting out of that situation. But it would be nice to play this game in the spirit it was intended, and I don't think that we did a good job of that. And I definitely got heated with Alex back, right? That's another part of the problem, is that when you're playing a difficult game like this, it's really easy to just get sucked into it. Where at one point, I went to do probably like what I would call a pretty rude gotcha. Like, he fired one gun at a unit of 20 that was sitting in my backfield. I was like, well, I'm going to lift it now. And we had said at the beginning that we weren't going to do gotcha games like that. And then I get heated in the moment, and we took that back and we didn't do it. You shot it at something else, and it was fine. But it's still not great to be put yourself in this situation. And that's only happening because you're getting flustered in a game state. Like, neither of us want to be doing that. Well, I certainly didn't want to be doing that. I can't speak to Alex's mindset. So yeah, I wanted to just say that it was the most unpleasant game of Warhammer I've ever played in my life. I will probably not continue going to UKTC events while Alex is allowed to attend them. He's had a ban from them before, and I am not interested in repeating this experience. I do not have any UKTC events scheduled for the time being. I've obviously submitted a complaint. I've had a bit of report from it. I spoke to the judges on the day, and they encouraged me to make the complaint. So yeah, that's all I kind of want to say here. But I think the main thing the reason I'm doing this is because I don't think it's fair to the wider community that they will have to continue experiencing games like this, because if it's happening to me, it's happening to everybody. I'm one of the most known players in the game. If people feel comfortable doing this to me, what are they doing to people that don't have a platform, that don't have a reputation? People like this, I don't think they should be allowed to be involved in the community in the capacity they are. I certainly don't think they should be winning super majors. So if I don't say something, who's going to in this situation? I think that's all I'm going to leave it at for that. I apologize for the bit of the negative tone to start off the episode. I had a fantastic rest of the tournament. My game with Scary was one of the best games of my competitive career, and I had a fantastic weekend, and I'd go back to Manchester in a heartbeat if I played just play the first 5 games. I don't care at all what you think, Alex, and you can move on, and I'm going to ban you. So thank you. But yeah, I don't actually care at all what you have to say, Alex. Thank you very much, but good luck. Okay, shall we move on?
Yes. I will say that I thank you for bringing that up, Innes, and I thank you for talking about it in details. I think a lot of the community tends to take their experiences and just kind of bury them off to the side and not talk about them in detail. And I appreciate you being just honest and kind of mature about the process, and about the game result kind of being already foretold, but about the experience itself. I think it's important that we do talk about our negative experiences. That doesn't mean brigading and pitchforks, but it does mean that we talk about our experiences honestly and maturely, and kind of make sure that people understand who is and isn't behaving well in our community at all times. Let's get into stats. We can talk about the last couple of weeks. I'm going to talk about them in summary, folks, when we talk about stats, and then we'll do the greater meta overview, and then we'll kind of see where this takes us. All right. So we haven't talked about stats for a couple weeks, so like I said, I'm going to talk about them in summary. The best performing faction of the last couple of weeks is probably not going to surprise anybody. It is Chaos Demons, who had 56 players, a 6.1% meta representation, and a 59.5% win rate. They have 3 event wins over the last couple of weeks, and 9 top 4s, 17 top 10s for a 2.31 over rep. In second place, may surprise a few people, but maybe not, is Gene Stealer Cult with 17 players, a 1.8% meta representation, a 58.4% win rate, 2 top 4s, 7 top 10s, and a 1.69 over rep. In third place, we have Deathwatch, who have the same number of players, 17, 56.1% win rate, and have an event win, 3 top 4s, 3 top 10s, and a 2.53 over rep. Deathwatch apparently have decided that they were once pronounced dead and will never be pronounced dead ever again by winning events. In fourth place, thought dead by a lot of people is Thousand Suns. 13 players, a 1.4% win meta representation, a 55.4% win rate over the last couple of weeks. 2 top 4s, 3 top 10s, and a 2.21. That is really low meta representation for Thousand Suns historically, but is kind of like a little bit more in line with what we've seen more recently from them. Yeah, I don't know. I think Thousand Suns have been kind of considered and shoved off to the side a little bit, but previously were kind of a juggernaut. In fifth place is Tyranids, 48 players, a 5.2% meta representation, a 54.5% win rate. But sorting it by win rate kind of hides the fact that they have 0 event wins, 1 top 4, and just 12 top 10s for a 0.3 for over rep. So they're inside the balance window and kind of aren't doing that great from an over rep perspective or from an event wins perspective. But they are winning games. So probably more looking like a mid-table terror kind of than anything else with the number of top 10s that we're kind of seeing there. And then in the bottom, we have one Imperial Agents player who is who played 4 games.
Doing their best, man.
Won none of them. So they have a 0% win rate for the last 2 weeks. Sorry, Imperial Agents players. Somebody got into me in the chat like the other week and was like, oh, how many events does Imperial Agents have to win? And the answer is they have to win enough that they aren't. They won 1. They have to win enough, though, that they aren't continuously in the bottom 5 of our win rate sort of statistics. But that's a conversation for a different day. Second from last, sorted by win rate, is Adeptus Mechanicus. 22 players, 2.4% of the meta, a 34.7% win rate, which is abysmal given like the number of players that are playing. 2 top 4s, 2 top 10s, and a 1.31 for over rep. I think this goes to show that like there's definitely like potential in the Adeptus Mechanicus army, but I think that army is just like really challenging to play both practically and to hobby, because I've seen some people and talked to some people who have played kind of the more competitive lists that use a lot of Taraxi and stuff like that.
Watching Hadar try to move that around at the weekend was truly miserable. Like just seeing him post pictures in like the AdMech channel of how he was having to pack it, and then seeing him at the table with 50, 60 Taraxi was, I couldn't imagine it. I know Tyler was complaining about it after Pariah, playing with that many models without having like fishing weights on their bases and then just falling over constantly. It's a difficult army, and it's one of those things where making them cheaper isn't going to fix that, because they're just going to become even more awkward to play.
Yep. I saw Hadar's bag, and I was like, I don't understand how those models are fitting in there.
Oh, yeah, Ed Watts and Hadar played a mirror match round 2 at Manchester and Purge the Foe, which I think might be one of the worst things you could ever describe to me of 300 admit models on the table.
That sounds terrible for everybody involved, because you're going to like move the table like a little bit or bump it, and like half of both armies are going to fall over.
Yeah, totally fair.
Third from the bottom is Necrons, oddly enough. Necrons had 53 players, a 5.8% meta representation, a 44.3% win rate, 1 event win, 5 top 4s, and 8 top 10s for a 1.35 over rep. It's weird to see Necrons there. They're still doing okay. They have event wins. They're still getting top 4s, and they're still doing fine in over rep as well. Just win rate, just kind of slightly below kind of that 55 to 45 ideal range, essentially. I'm sure that next week Necrons will be back where they usually are, which is in like the top 5 to 10 factions. Fourth from the bottom is Black Templars. 10 players, 1.1% of the meta, 45.7% win rate, and no placings of any kind for an over rep of 0. Space Wolves round out the bottom 5. Not really, because I'm going to skip over counting Imperial Agents just for a funny story in a second. Space Wolves, 20 players, 2.2% of the meta, a 45.7% win rate, 2 top 4s, 3 top 10s, and a 1.44 for overrep. Innes, what army do you think is rounding up the bottom 5? It is a surprise.
Somehow it's Eldar.
It is not. It
Okay,
is
good.
Astra Militarum.
That might be worse.
48 players, a 5.2% meta representation, a 45.7% win rate, 1 event win, 2 top 4s, 4 top 10s for a 0.6 overrep. It's very strange given the actual like kind of perception of Bridgehead and stuff like that to see that army just doing so poorly.
Watching
by
players
win rate
like
and also by overrep.
Wesley just Goomba stomp RTTs with an A or GTs with an Aegis defense line, and then seeing those stats just fills me with fear.
Otherwise, our event winners are Imperial Knights, who are kind of consistently performing well at this point, which is very strange to say. I don't think we've seen a consistently performing Imperial Knight for
I want to
army.
give a specific shout out to Imperial Knights because I watched him play on the table next to me and had a bit of a chat with him after his game. But Reese Darville was playing Imperial Knights with double Imperial Agents Corvus Blackstar allies and went 4-1, losing to Josh Roberts on table 1 in round 5 was his loss at Nottingham. Which is, if you're going to lose, not a bad place to do it. So massive shout out to Reese. Incredibly well done with the double Corvus Blackstar. I think they were like all the anti-Eldar loadout as well. Just like Eldar players just getting run over by like a billion shot Corvus Blackstars that ignore terrain. Absolute hero.
Amazing. I kind of love that. I'm not going to lie. I also love the fact that like the Imperial Knights lists that are doing really well are like half Imperial Agent simulators.
Yeah, as they should be. Less Knights, more stuff is personally my favorite.
It is definitely the way that I would want to play Knights.
It makes them feel closer to a real army, right? Like you have got 600 points of scoring garbage and 1,400 points of vehicle skew. That's a Space Marine list. I can handle that. I can deal with that emotionally. Like it's not that different from Ultramarines Gladius to me.
Innis can't deal emotionally with the idea of it being like a Knight Valiant and 2 big Knights. That's
that's awful. No, that's too much. But like, when you're just like, yeah, man. So I've got like my 4 units of garbage space, my 4 or 5 units of garbage and 10 tanks. I'm like, okay, that's just 10th edition. Like nothing crazy about that.
Fair. Chaos Space Marines have 2 event wins and a 52.3% win rate. Death Guard got an event win. Orcs got an event win. Eldar won 3 events. Have 8 top 4s and 17 top 10s for a 1.69. They just kind of have a middling win rate at 50.9%. That might have to do with the fact that there were 68 Eldar players the last 2 weeks with a 7.4 meta representation.
Definitely getting up there in the numbers. Eldar players are finishing building their Astrid Warriors or buying their base extenders.
Yep. And then Space Marines have the other 2 event wins of the last couple weeks. They won Manchester basically, so that's one of them. And then 3 top 4s, 10 top 10s, and a 0.71 overrep. I think Space Marines are doing just fine, but I think there are some pain points there that probably need to be addressed as well. And then I kind of wanted to talk about how some of the detachments are doing since we have some of that data now. We have a couple weeks of it. I'll start with Eldar because people are kind of going to be generally more interested in it. The most popular faction by far is Aspect Host, which had 21 players and a 56.8% win rate. Second most popular is Devoted to the Ennead, which has a 50.9. And then Warhost with a 52.9. Everything outside of that,
fast is good as it turns out. Fast gone good. Who'd have guessed?
The data still has like some Battle Host stuff in it, which is fine, but that's just probably because there's a little bit of a mixed bag somewhere in there.
Yeah, we probably still got events playing old back.
Yep. And then we got Chaos Demons, who I'll just talk about very briefly. The last 2 weeks have actually seen Demonic Incursion catch up in win rate and exceed it over Legion of Excess. 25 players for Demonic Incursion with a 54.3. Legion of Excess has 26 players with a 52% win rate. So
Incursion just has such a wildly cracked stratagem in 6-inch deep strike and charge for anything in Shadow. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, what if you just got to be, or sorry, not even in Shadow, just 6-inch deep strike and charge, and then you have 6-inch deep strike and charge in Shadow off of demons as well. So you're just like, yeah, so what if I just delivered whatever I wanted, anywhere I wanted, anytime I wanted? It turns out that's a good stratagem. Nobody is shocked.
I'm so shocked that a 6-inch deep strike and charge stratagem might be good. Just shocked, amazingly so.
Especially in an army with reroll charges and possible to charge with reasonable access to both.
And units that might actually be good in melee combat most of the time.
Or have high OC, one of the two. Not always both.
One of the two. Yeah, not usually both. Usually just one. Chaos Space Marines is the other one that I kind of wanted to talk about because outside of Soulforge Warpack, which is just 2 people sharing a 68.8% win rate, we have Creations of Bio with a 52.1, and then Pact-Bound Zealots, the second most popular sub-faction choice at the moment, is at a 54.7% win rate. Yeah, that's kind of funny to see. I don't know why. It just strikes me as funny. And then last, and certainly not least, is Astra Militarum. Bridgehead does have the most players and has a 56.1% win rate. Combined Regiment has a 40.8% win rate. Hammer the Emperor has a 33.3. Mechanized Assault has a 25. And then Siege Regiment has 2 people splitting the difference and getting a 50% win rate, basically. So honestly, what's happening is that I think those other detachments are just kind of pulling the win rate down just overall. Simply because they're just
Plague Legion like won a GT and everything. We're seeing some stupid stuff out of it. I want to see some card players doing some experimentation. If you guys can't win with Recon, what are we doing? Right? The Demons players are out there winning with Plague Legion. The Eldar players are, for some reason, some of them are playing Spirit Conclave. I think you guys can do better.
Yeah, I mean, those people playing Spirit Conclave must be having a good time because there are at least 5 in this data set, and they have a 38% win rate, basically. So
well, I hope they're having a good time because they're not having a winning time.
That's true. I don't know. But that is essentially where we're at kind of for the last couple of weeks. There's nothing too surprising, I think, in there. The win rate kind of tracks mostly with kind of the performance outside of a few things that are a little bit irregular with like Deathwatch and Thousand Suns and Gene Stealer Cult, who are like lower faction representation armies that have kind of bopped up by win rate. But they have been doing well, and we've seen them do well throughout this.
How are my boys doing outside of me?
Outside of you, man, I don't have a good way to.
Well, I just mean like, how are they doing?
Right,
like, how are they doing?
They had a 58.4% win rate.
58.
Yeah, there are 17 of them in it.
Guys, we can't get nerfed again. There's not that much juice left. Please stop it.
There were only 17 people, so not that many. Almost twice as many as there are Sisters players, though. So there is that going for you. Sisters players were the second least represented faction with only 9 people, less than most of the Marine sub-factions and most of the other rare factions that we usually see. And that's across 2 weeks. So yeah, Sisters maybe got nerfed a little too hard. Possibly, maybe. Just a little.
That doesn't sound right. I think we should nerf them again.
Just merge them with Imperial agents and make the old Order Hereticus book, essentially, that they used to have.
Yeah, that might be a better way to do it than rather than letting. Honestly, if we just take, you can buff them back to wherever they were as long as you take indirect off of Exorcists. I might not even mind.
I think Exorcists are better without indirect, anyways. You just drive them straight towards your opponent.
Sure, but at least they can't indirect me at that point.
That's fair, reasonable. I get it. All right, that's it for the stats for the last couple of weeks. We're going to go into summary-based statistics now, where we talk about everything that's happened during this meta in a way that will be funny, amusing, and not at all silly.
And definitely not subjective in the slightest. This is all purely fact-based information.
Only facts on this show. In fact, that should be the name of an episode. Only facts.
Let's not. Our logo is not blue and white.
We could change it just for that episode.
Let's not do that. All right, so same format as we've normally run. I'll give you guys a rundown very quickly. So we are pulling up the stats for every faction in 3 major categories. That is overall win rate. How well is your faction doing in terms of winning games? We will be looking at overrepresentation, which is the ratio between how much it shows up in play rate and how much it makes top 4s at tournaments. So if your faction is 10% of top 4s and 10% of player base, it'll get an overrep of 1. If your faction is 5% of players and 10% of top 4s, it'll have an overrep of 2. We've seen things as high as 7 recently. So, we'll see how this goes.
Usually it doesn't hit 7 unless something real shady is happening with meta representation.
Look, shady is still real data. Whether
Sure.
it's relevant data is up for you guys to decide. And then the last one we'll be looking at is actual just raw event wins. How good is this army at converting to putting the number on the podium? So what we'll be doing is we'll be going through each faction. We'll get basically points towards categories based on how well it does in each of them. If it's top 5 in multiple categories, it'll be in our top tier, which we'll rename to S tier at the end. If it's top 5 in one category and top 10 or top 10 in 2 or more, it'll be in A tier, and so on and so forth down, as you can see on the left. Take a seat is the middle. Yeah, just smack bang in the middle for everybody else. I'm going to continue making these ones weird references to things that make me laugh. Because that was the first line to a song called The Middle.
Malcolm in the Middle.
Yeah, it's been Malcolm in the Middle. I think we could do Piggy in the Middle, like for the children's game. Like, there's loads of options. Like,
wait, keep going. Pause for a second. What the fuck is Piggy in the Middle?
So Piggy in the Middle is a game that you basically play to torment other children, which is to say that it's a game where you both you and another friend grab a ball and you find a victim and you throw the ball over the other person's head, calling them the piggy in the middle, and they are the piggy until they catch the ball, at which point the person who threw it and failed becomes the new piggy in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can kind of sort of understand.
Yeah, it's basically just like weaponized child's torment. So yeah, so we've got very options for there, and then from there it'll go down. If an army is top 10 in one category and bottom 10 in another, we'll cancel them out. A top 5 cancels out 2 top bottom 10s, etc., etc. We will variably move these around. There's a little bit of how do we feel. Things will broadly be ordered within tiers. So top left will be the best, bottom right will be the worst, and that is it. We have had to separate out Death Watch, who are now their own army again. They're sitting around here somewhere. I'm going blind. Doesn't matter. But we now have a new Imperial Agent squad.
Isn't it the one next to the Imperial Knight right there? Right to the left of it?
Maybe. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
We're starting with Chaos Demons, I assume.
We certainly are starting with Chaos Demons. So take it away. Jeremy has kindly provided all of these stats for us from all of Pariah Nexus.
Yep. All right. So Chaos Demons have our third for overrep, which is a 1.65. They are first for win rate, which is a 56.8, and first for event wins, which is 12.
That puts them comfortably in top 5 in all 3 categories.
Yeah, wow. I'm sure everybody was very surprised by this. Baffled, even. Not even
objectively the best army in the game. I couldn't imagine losing to them, despite having done it.
Look, if we just make it a habit of every time our hosts say that they don't like Legion of Excess and then losing a super major or major immediately after it, or a team event based thing, that'd be great. It'd be cool. It'd be really
I think Legion of Excess sucks, but it's still good enough to beat me. So
fair. I think Legion of Excess just has just enough tricks and just enough pressure to just like off kilter people and take advantage.
I mean, like I was watching Michael Hooper from Team Iceland was playing at Manchester this weekend. He was playing a Shalaxian 3 Keepers version, and he was just straight up rolling through people on tables next to me most of his missions. It's a very powerful army. It's a very binary army, and it does that same kind of thing where it's very one-dimensional to play against. It's not super interesting to play against a lot of the time because you're just kind of resolving the stat check, and that can always be a little bit disappointing. So yeah, I think definitely an army that's sitting at the top, and hopefully an army that cops something out of the Balance Dataslate to put it back to a bit more at odds. But yeah, first in overrep, third in overrep, first in win rate, and first in overall wins does put it comfortably at the top of our breakdown.
I guess next, if we're just going in order by icon.
I mean, we should realistically do a different order because otherwise we're just going to fill from top to bottom. So we need to do this in a way that's different to what Jeremy sent it. So
no, I said Dark Angels is next because I'm going by the list, the order of icons at the bottom.
Oh, you're going in the order of icons. Cool, sweet. I was going to say, don't go in the order of the one that Jeremy.
No, we're going in the order of the icons.
Okay, so Dark Angels.
Dark Angels are next.
Tell me where Dark Angels are.
So they are 13th in overrep with a 0.97. They are 22nd in win rate with a 47.32. And then they are 16th for event wins with 2. So that is 2 bottom 10s, is my understanding.
So that puts Dark Angels comfortably in our second from the bottom tier. Poor little guys just really, really can't pull it off. They are, they're doing okay. A 47 on win rate isn't terrible, but it's an army that doesn't really get a ton out of the Oath of Moment changes. That didn't make a ton out of the data slate changes because Dark Angels traditionally like to run their own detachments, right? Because or their own data sheets like Dark Deathwing Knights and Samuel and things like that. So they got something out of Outriders. And then outside of that, you like maybe you put Azrael with intercessors now and you get some double shots. So like it's okay, but he's better in other units, you know, intercessor companions and things like that. It just didn't make it. They didn't make it like bandits from the space range changes like some other detachments did. Dark Angel Stormlance is definitely something we've seen doing some interesting work, but not the most represented and definitely not the most powerful.
Yep. All right, and then next up is Chaos Knights, who are 20th in overrep with a 0.79. 21st in win rate, which is a 47.65, and then 11th for event wins with 3 event wins, which I think averages them out to 1 bottom 10.
Well, that sounds about right to me. Chaos Knights are slightly below average. I think we're probably going to see Chaos Knights on the upswing. They have quite good matchups into Guard and Eldar. Watching a bunch of Yunari players get very sad about getting shot to death by Chaos Knights over the weekend. Vic VJ went down in round 2 to a Chaos Knight player. We saw Pierce Conjurer from Team Ireland have a very close game with Chaos Knights that was bailed out by Burden of Trust, a few other things like that. So yeah, it's definitely an army that I think we'll see on the upswing, but always an army that people know what Chaos Knights does at the end of the day. So you have to be a very good Chaos Knight player to really push them to their limit. And you know, for the most of the player base, that's just not going to be the case, I don't think.
They do just have like the perfect profile for T3 infantry, though, basically, which is
Havoc Launchers plus
90%.
Battle Shocks is like the worst thing in the world for an Eldar army. You're just like, so every single Eldar unit in your army is going to start taking Battle Shocks if it wants to hold primary ever. Good luck. They're all at -1.
Next up, we've got Tau.
Can I guess? I
You can
really feel like
guess.
it's going to be here, but tell me the data.
So where did you say they're going to be? Sorry, I
Oh,
missed
right
it.
at the bottom. I was like, Tau are awful, right?
Oh no, they're actually you're right. I'm not gonna lie to you, Innes. Tau are 23rd in overrep at a 0.545, 24th in win rate at a 46.39, and 16th in event wins with 2 event wins, which means they have 1 bottom 10 and 2 bottom 5s.
Yeah, Tau kind of suck right now.
Which is
I don't
funny
think Tau
because
are awful, but they're not. Nobody's really playing them outside of like diehard faction experts. And they're only okay, and almost everything's been nerfed at least once at this point in this book, right?
yeah, I also think that despite fast gun good in this edition, Tau just don't have enough stuff for the player base to kind of
I
like make a key killing.
watching like Ox Cadre is such a cool detachment. And then I've been speaking to a few clients about it, and they're just like they put the list on the table, and I look at it, I'm like, where is your stuff? Why do you have no units? And then I'll watch a Montcalm player put down like 18 tanks and 3 reptiles, and I'll be like, oh, that's where it all is. It's in the other lists that aren't like exactly and only. It feels like Skyrays and maybe Riptides are still undercosted, but everything else in that army is just like stupidly overcosted in a lot of cases. And
Yep.
I don't think that creates a very particularly interesting army.
I
I
will
would
say
be
I
okay
think
with Riptides going to the Great Legends in the Sky if it would give the rest of the army some stuff.
true. I do think Pizza Bagels has the best title, which is the Greater Mid. That is in fact the best middle title I've ever seen.
The mid are good.
The Midder Good is also great. Ah, damn. All right. Gene Stealer Colts is next. Watch me look for them real quick. There we go. All right. Gene Stealer Colts are 18th in overrep with a 0.85, 12th in win rate with a 50.11, and 19th in event wins with 1, which has them even out to 1 bottom 10.
GSC are bad. Wow. I mean, I know it's probably true. Doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel right in my soul, but it's probably true.
Yeah.
Bioscientic is pretty good. It's not broken. Host of Ascension is a nightmare to play if you're not one of like 4 people who are willing to put themselves through that. Shout out to Isaac, Floof, and Sebastian for being willing to go through that experience in the meantime, and also to the guys who took it to Pyra. But yeah, man, it just doesn't feel that. Just you don't feel broken. That's definitely where I'm kind of at. Like my host list felt stupid in a lot of the games I played, but it has very rarely felt particularly like outrageous inside that realm. But Yeah, GSC buffs, man. Come on, where are they? Let me see some little spice. Give me some stuff.
They don't need it. Please don't.
They
GW.
definitely do. I need
All
more
right.
units. Let me break rule of
You
6
don't.
for my
No, you
battle line.
don't. And it's
Let me have
stop.
118 EFIs. Let me
I
have
feel
30
like
mans. I'll
I
be
feel like
good with 30 mans.
I feel like one of Ennis's like things that he did is he infiltrated these stats and fucked them up on purpose. All right, next up.
If you want to hear my thoughts on Final Day, you can check out Art of War Down Under to hear my thoughts on Final Day.
I'll plan generations in the making for Ennis to make that plug. All right, Black Templars are next. I'm gonna save everybody some time. Black Templars are just bottom 5 in every category. They are tied for the bottom in overrep, win rate, and event wins with 0, 0, and a 44.4. There you go.
Wow, there are significantly worse even than Tau. Simply, nobody plays Black Templars.
Yeah, it's just bad. It's long gone are the days of 120 like intercessor bodies patrolling across the field to murder you. All right, next up are Thousand Suns, which I have to find real quick in this stupid spreadsheet, which actually is amazing. It's just not sorted for what I need it for. All right, Thousand Suns are 22nd in overrep with a 0.74, 10th in win rate with a 50.77, and then tied for the bottom basically for event wins with 0. So they are 1 top 10 and 1 bottom 5.
So 1 top 10 and 1 bottom 5. What knocks them down to like here?
Yeah, it would be like at the top of that category,
There?
I think.
They have a top 10, so they get to be at the top of the category. Thousand Suns feel like an army that just nobody wants to play now.
They are not quite the lowest represented, but they're in the like bottom 5 for representation for factions. Like
Yeah, and that's including factions like Imperial Agents.
Yeah, I mean Imperial Agents are the lowest represented faction. Let's not get too excited. All right. Next up we have, I think that's Death Watch, isn't it? That looks like
that is Death Watch, yeah.
All right. Death Watch, on the other hand, are second for overrep, second for win rate, and 11th for event wins. Overrep is 2.02, win rate is 53.92. They have 3 event wins, so they're tied for 11th with some people.
There are 99 of them, and they're having the best time.
Oh. Yes, Dan Morse, you may have a kiss blown to you.
Hey, Dan. There are more Death Watch sub-faction players than there are total Sisters players right
now. Oh, don't do that, Ennis. Don't do that. All right. Next up is Imperial Knights. Death Watch are good. All right.
Death Watch are good. But are they that good? Are they top 5 good? Are they top S tier good? I just don't believe it. I'm not scared of playing against Death Watch. I'm sure Mark Cartel would have beat my ass sideways at LVO if we played, but no one else is Mark Cartel. I don't know if I believe this.
Jack Tight, if you play both Sisters and Death Watch, you should just play Death Watch.
Yeah, you should like, play Death Watch, Jack. That's just how this works.
Yep. All right. Next up is Imperial Knights. Imperial Knights are 14th for overrep with a 0.963. I'm going to do that last digit just to annoy Jeremy. 3rd in win rate with a 52.6. And 10th in wins with 4. That puts them in a top 5, a top 10, and then a middle, basically.
So Imperial, like if we separated this stat out and we didn't include Brian Jones from Art of War, would this be significantly worse? Yeah, probably. But we don't do that here. So Imperial Knights get to be better than Thousand Suns in this tier list.
Also, just as a suggestion, you should just buy some immolators and include them in your Imperial Knights list. Just do it.
Yeah, like all of Sisters win rate is currently in immolators.
It's true.
They've got a lot of stock tied up in immolator futures right now.
All of them. All right, Custodes players, I am sick and tired of your shit, and you're up next. I'm just letting you know this ahead of time, but I'm doing this in an unbiased way. Imperial Adeptus Custodes are 8th in overrep with a 1.087, 5th in win rate with a 51.95, and 7th in event wins with 6. You have a top 5 and a top 10 in a middle category. Get wrecked, get fucked, and stop complaining at me about your faction.
The stories are fine. Please stop whinging.
For the love of God. I had somebody complaining in a local Discord about how they couldn't possibly increase the cost of like blade champions or wardens in that army. And I was like, your faction's fine. Stop
Man, Soldier
complaining.
Spearhead doesn't even play them half the time.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just tired of it. I'm tired, guys. All right.
I'm tired, boss.
I'm tired, boss. Next is Tyranids.
Yeah, Custodes had 2 top 10s in there, right? 8th, 7th, and
Custodes
5th.
had, 2 top 10s. Oh, one of them
Yeah.
didn't get counted. I wonder why. I don't know.
Shambles. Yeah, they're going to top of 8.
They were already going to go in there anyways because they had a top 5 in a
They
category.
are. I just want Custodes players to know that they were top 10 in every category. And that puts them. Now, I will happily admit that their matchup into Asserman is not very good, but
yeah, that one matchup into that one character. All right. Next is Tyranids, our Bucky boys, our favorites.
Tyranids. I want to believe that it's down here somewhere because I hate playing Tyranids right now, but I'm sure it's going to be like right here.
All right. Tyranids have our 17th for overrep with a 0.85. They are 9th for win rate with a 50.84, and then 11th for event wins with 3. So they have a top 10
and a bottom
10, which averages out, and then a middle. So they're in the middle.
They go smack bang in the middle. Yep. Which is just where Tyranids have been for ever.
I do love this take a seat category is just Tyranids.
Like, Godspeed, Nids. You guys are like, you're in the waiting room. You don't need anything. You don't really want anything. Like, it's like, yeah, dude, could Nids do with like a little bit of spice? Am I bored of Execranes? I mean, yeah, but are they like objectively bad? No, like you can't argue that. You could maybe say that they're a little dull, that they've been doing the same thing for 2 years, and those are all true, but they're not bad.
They're the English cooking equivalent of spice. Just salt, just pepper, nothing else.
No, the English equivalent is Imperial Knights who are importing everyone else's spice.
That's actually okay. That's better. Yes. All right. We're gonna take that and move along.
Tyranids are like autism food, right? They're just like dino nuggies and smiley faces.
Innes, you can only say that because that is what you eat. It's okay.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Next up is Death Guard. All right. Death Guard are actually doing okay, if I remember correctly.
Death Guard are doing pretty good. Plague Storm's a pretty good list.
Death Guard are, though, 21st for overrep at 0.78, 8th for win rate, which is a 50.87, and then 16th for event wins, which is 2. So they have a top 10 category,
bottom 10,
a bottom 10, and a bottom, and then a middle.
So Death Guard go with Tyranids?
They are 21st for overrep, which is a bottom 5. So they are top 10, bottom 10, bottom 5.
Okay, so that goes like here, bottom of here.
Yeah. Yep.
Man, that feels wrong again. Death Guard are just... There are a lot of just not great Death Guard lists out there, but every time I see like Nathan Roberts' Plague Storm list that Aiden Smalley went 5-1 at Manchester with, or 5-0 at Manchester with, or anything like that list's just pretty good, man. It's pretty good. If you're out there trying to play Plague Marines, still stop it. Just put like 10 tanks and more turn in your list. Promise you'll have a better time.
Having seen that army being used recently during a teams thing, I'm just like very impressed with that army, and people should play it more.
Oh my goodness, Nathan, you lagged out for a second there. Right, I thought we were having a review last week.
No, it's generic Space Marines next, I promise. That was just what happens when I have to talk about generic Space Marines.
Okay.
All right. Regular old Space Marines, the most popular faction on this list with an 8% of the meta representation, are 10th for overrep, 15th for win rate, and 3rd for wins with 9 event wins, a 49.55 win rate, and a 1.05 for overrep, which is a top 5 in a category, a mid category, and a bottom 10 category.
I don't get it, guys. What are you doing? Space Marines were 10th in overrep, 15th in win rate, and 3rd in wins, right? So that's a top 10. This, I think the categories at the right are screwed over. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I think they're a little messed up.
It's a top 5, a top 10, and a middle. So that's going right here. It's probably not as good as Custodes, but
yep.
Space Marines are really good, guys. Like, I don't know if anybody noticed this, but Ultramarines might be one of the best armies in the game right now. There are a lot of people playing Space Marines, a lot of people playing bad Space Marines, but Ultramarines are really good.
Yep. Next up is Grey Knights, based on the icon.
Grey Knights, indeed.
And Grey Knights are in a sad state, unfortunately, based on what I'm about to tell folks. Grey Knights are 16th for overall, 0.892. 14th for win rate at a 49.6, and 19th for event wins with 1 event win, which is 2 bottom 10 categories.
That is pretty rough for per Grey Knights there. I would not have put Grey Knights down there. Like, Warp Bane is a good detachment, and it goes around battering people all the time. But it does seem like it's struggling to convert into event wins because it is still just Grey Knight data sheets at the end of the day. And the Grey Knight data sheets are good, but not that good, I suppose.
Yeah. I think they also aren't getting played as much as they used to. They're at 3.3% meta representation, which seems a little bit low. They still seem like a really good army, and that Grotmist attachment is really good.
It's really good. It's doing out there doing war crimes, but it is not out there winning goddamn anything. So I think it's just one of those lists that has some kind of binary matchup spreads where you'll bounce into the wrong list at the wrong time, but it just doesn't really have an answer because it's very one-dimensional. Watching Sam Nash's really cool list get ripped apart because it had a complete lack of anti-tank against Josh ITT, or playing against it with Vindicators in general, or laughing at it with Gene Cults as it struggles to kill a unit of 20 ever. Like, it's a very, very difficult, very weird place to be for Grey Knights. I think they're fine, but it's a difficult army to really want to bring.
Innes, I want you to tell me where you think Imperial Agents should be.
Where I think they should be and where I think they are. Where I think they are is probably going to end up being here because Imperial Agents break the minds of the hearts of people, but they should probably be here.
All right, so I'm going to tell you where they are.
Guys.
I'm going to tell you where they are. All right, so Imperial Agents are first in overrep, 3.135. They are fourth in win rate at a 52.38. And they are 19th in event wins with 1. I don't know, man. They definitely could be slotted into S tier, but they shouldn't be because of that one bottom.
They have a bottom 10. I am not giving it to them. I refuse. On principle, I am like, no, just I'm not doing it.
I will say that their overrep is 100% related to the fact that they have extremely low meta representation.
They get docked a point because of the top, because they have a bite at the bottom 10, so they get dropped a bit. Remember, these categories are guidelines with that. We're going to replace them with S, A, B, C, D, F, and garbage later. Now, it is worth saying for anybody at home who is watching this and is receiving some stupid data that there are 16 Imperial Agents players in our database.
Yeah, it is the smallest. So their 3 top 4s just are very incredibly weighted. And honestly, you could probably bump them down even further just because of that. But it's okay. They're going to go where they are because of stats, and they're just going to stay there. It is really funny, though, and it will amuse me forever.
I'm leaving it there because I want the Reddit comments. That's really what it's for.
That's really what we want. All right. Astra Militarum are next. And a return to normalcy, I think.
So this will be half current data and half old data for Astra Militarum. Obviously, their book will be split across both sets of this.
So they are 4th in overrep with a 1.42. They are 6th in win rate with a 51.6, and they are 4th in event wins with 8.
Thank God.
So they are right where they are supposed to be, which is top 5 in multiple categories.
Are they better than Death Watch? I would say they are.
Yes, they are.
Death Watch at 2-11, 4-6-4 for guard. Yeah, I'm giving that to guard.
Right, and then, I mean, guard are good guys. Bridgehead is an amazing detachment that is only getting better with the book being released now.
And the new book is going to take some time to discover if people should really be using rattlings in their mechanized guard detachment, or if they should just play good data sheets.
Yep. Chaos Space Marines are next. They are 5th for overrep with a 1.29. 20th for win rate with a 48.3.
That's what I was expecting.
And then a 2nd for event wins with 11. They have 11. This is really the time of chaos. Chaos Demons have 12 event wins. Chaos Space Marines have 11 event wins.
So they're basically exactly the opposite of Imperial Agents. Imperial Agents can't win an event to save their life, but have a great win rate. And Chaos Space Marines can't seem to lose an event, but also have the worst win rate just going of major factions.
Yep.
So
they do still belong in like the top of
They
top
are.
5 and 1 or
yeah,
one
they're going above
category, the
Agents,
bottom
right? Like I
10. Yeah.
refuse to even entertain the notion. I am so glad Chaos Space Marines are somehow, despite their player base, back up top.
Yep. All right. And then next up we have Necrons. All right, Necrons players.
Surely they're so good.
They are so good.
It won't be, but it should be.
They are 6th in overrip at 1.26, 7th in win rate for a 51.55, and then 6th for event wins with 7. So they are top 10 in all of their categories.
Top 10 in all of their categories.
You can put them above Imperial Agents. It's fine.
They don't have any top 5s, though, and Imperial Agents do. Like, I feel...
They go probably under Custodes, then.
Yeah. Like, Tiebreaker's got to be... I mean, Tiebreaker should be vibes, right? Like, that's how...
Yeah, Custodies are just above them. Are 857 and they're 676. So it kind of depends. They just have a top 5 category for Custodes, whereas
so Custodies have a top 5 category, Necrons don't. They're both top 10s and everything. I'll put them below.
Yep. I will say that Necrons have been like the most consistent faction of 10th edition, essentially. Like they have consistently been good. They've consistently been in this top tier for the whole edition.
Necrons have just never been bad. They've been middling a little bit. That's as far as I'm willing to admit that they've ever gotten, though, is middling. And one of my a client of mine put it best. Eldar releasing might be the biggest buff Necrons have ever got if you're just willing to put 40 Necron warriors on the table.
Next up is Drukhari. Oh man, Drukhari are 12th in overrep, 0.975, 16th in win rate with a 49.5, and 19th in event wins with 1. So they have 2 bottom 10 categories.
Is it not 27 categories? So 16th would be middle.
It says 2 bottom 10, but yeah, I think you're right. I think it is 2
12,
2
16.
middles.
Yeah.
2 middles.
Or they're because they're 27, so 18 down is so
2 middles and a bottom 10.
Yeah, they can go bottom of bottom 10, bottom of middle. Their Drukhari are okay. They're fine. They're an okay army. Good players will get a lot out of them. They have a lot of movement shenanigans. If you can demech their vehicles, you will generally beat them. But that is not always a thing that you can guarantee to do.
Yep. Next up is Orcs, who have had kind of a story, I think, since this Balance Slate happened.
Now, I feel like Orcs should be here, personally. But
I'm sure you do. I mean, you keep thinking the armies that you don't like and are too powerful.
It's true. That is how I think. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Orcs are 9th in overrep with a 1.05, 13th in win rate with a 49.67, and then 4th for event wins with 8. So they have a top 5 in a single category. And then
are they better or worse than Space Marines, Nathan?
I think Orcs are better than Space Marines. I think Orcs are harder to play than Space Marines.
Their stats better? Their stats are better, right? Because Space Marines have that bottom 10 kicking around.
Yes, they are because of that.
I'm okay with that.
All right. Next up is World Eaters. Anthony, unfortunately, is not here for me to torment with whatever these numbers will be. They are 15th for overrep
I'm
with a
also
0.
Pretty sure the Imperial Knight should be like here based on that.
You can change it. That's fine.
I know.
And a 0.94. They are 18th in win rate with a 49.05 and 11th for event wins with 3. So that is 2 bottom 10s and a middle, essentially.
World Eaters kind of bad?
Yeah, I think World Eaters are struggling, and people have been kind of splitting between Wrestles of Wrath and like Berserker Warband and kind of split the difference between the two. Hopefully their codex adds something to them, because it can't just be Angron forever that they're leaning on, right?
Yeah, it can't just be, oh god, I can't believe Angron res, or oh god, I can't believe Angron didn't res into the sunset. That's not an army identity. That's a mental problem.
True. All right. Next up is Space Wolves, or 3 Wolves Howling at Moon. I don't think they're going to return to the top 5 as they have historically been in there.
Hope not. There's nobody playing them anymore.
Correct. All right. So we have Space Wolves, who are 7th in overrep with a 1.115. 23rd in win rate with a 46.98, and then 11th in event wins with 3. So that is a bottom 5 and 1, a top 10 and 1, and then a middle, which I think puts them in a bottom 10 in one category, essentially.
Yep, it's a plus. Yeah, about there. Okay, that feels fine. Space Wolves where they finally belong, with 120 players as well.
Yep. All right. Next up, we have Blood Angels. Probably mostly Bloodless Angels for this performance metric, to be totally honest. But
they're pretty good. That army's pretty strong. I would probably, if I was guessing, put them in top 5 in multiple.
Yep. They are not, unfortunately. Blood Angels are 19th in overrep at a 0.85, 11th in win rate at a 50.24, and then 8th in event wins with 5. So they have a bottom 10, a middle, and then a top 10.
So Blood Angels are with Tyranids. Sure. That feels right. That feels accurate. Yeah. Lies, damned lies, and statistics.
I mean, that's really true with Imperial Agents. I'm just going to let people know I agree with you. It shouldn't be there, but I'm going to leave it there. We're going to leave it there, in fact, because it will really fuck up Reddit's day.
I'm enjoying that we are very clearly having a haves and have-nots metagame of things that are capable and things that apparently suck. That's not what I think this metagame is either. But
it's true.
As always, you create a formula, you stick with it through thick or thin, and you refuse to update it. And that's just how Warhammer works, right?
Yep. And then AdMech is next with the most confusing number of lines for their logo. All right, Adeptus Mechanicus, you are 24th for overrep at 0.44, 25th for win rate at 45.2, and 24th for event wins with 0.
So bottom 5. No, they're worse. The no event wins I put in the worse than Black Templars. Black Templars at least won something.
Did Black Templars win something?
No, they did not. No, they're better than Black Templars. Oh my god, that's depressing.
They are better than Black Templars on average, basically.
That's really sad.
Yep. All right. Next up is Votan. Oh man, Votan. I don't know if I can do this. Votan are 25th in overrep with a 0.389. Oof. Brutal. 19th for win rate with a 48.9, and then 19th for event wins with 1. They are bottom 10 in 2 and bottom 5 in 1.
Germans, you gotta pull this out. Do better. You can be stronger than this. This isn't how your faction has to be. It's okay for you guys to come out and win some stuff if you think the army's good.
People kept telling me how at Pariah, Votan were just doing terrible things to people.
And I'm sure they were in the hands of 2 people.
Yep. Next up are Eldar. This is going to include a mix of data, so folks shouldn't get too excited about this.
Mostly old data, right?
Yeah, it will be mostly old data. Eldar are 11th in overrep with a 0.998, 17th in win rate with a 49.3, and 8th in event wins with 5. So they have a top 10, a bottom 10, and a middle.
They're sitting with Blood Angels and Tyranids.
Seems appropriate. You know, that's 3 factions that like to fight each other. It's great. And then last, and actually probably least, is Sisters. I'm sorry, Sisters. Sisters, probably the worst faction in the game. Sisters are 26th in overrep with a 0.176. 27th in win rate with 42. That is the lowest win rate of all the factions that I'm currently seeing here. And then are tied for the bottom in event wins with 0. I think they are worse than Black Templars and worse than Adeptus.
It's worth like half of the list that you could build in Space Marines. You could play a generic Black Templars and have the same army. So I'm willing to say that if you were just like you have to play Black Templars or you have to play Sisters, that you get significantly more people willing to take you up on just playing Black Templars.
I will also say that Sisters have the lowest single faction meta representation of any faction currently, other than Imperial Agents, but I don't really count Imperial Agents. And their win rate is just abysmal. Their win rate is the lowest possible at 42.08. They do have a single top 4 and 7 top 10s, which is better overall than Black Templars.
But it puts them at a
But
0.176 over rep. So for
Yeah.
every 6 Sisters players, one person is making a top 4.
yeah, which just makes them second from the bottom, with Black Templars at the bottom.
Having not managed one.
Yes. But that's not great. That's pretty bad. So that's where we're at with that faction. So this is our tier list. Do you think? What do you think? Do you think we have nothing in top 10 in one category? It's very
That is something
strange.
that happens. What has basically happened here is that a whole bunch of things were top 10 in one and middle in everything else, and that everything that was bad everywhere. We have all 4 of these, like 3 of these 4 factions are taking up 3 of the bottom 5 slots for their factions, right? Admech Sisters and Black Templars are all eating up 3 of 5 bottom 5s, which is normally somewhere where you can farm out a bunch of like little point stocks for people. But yeah, with those 3 armies being truly dire right now, we're not having an A tier. So let me do the fun bit, which is where I get to rename the tiers so that they become more inflammatory. We have our S tier, we have our A tier, we have our B tier, we have our take a C tier, we have D tier, we have F tier, and we have trash tier.
All right. And so one of the things I'm going to talk about real quick is we're going to go through just these metrics real quick to talk about kind of the data altogether and kind of the trends that are in it. And then we'll probably switch over to questions. I will say that we only have one faction above the 55 to 45% range that we usually talk about. Only 2 out of it, and that's Black Templars and Sisters. I will say, I think where some of our problems lie currently is that there are 4 factions currently without any event wins, and then 4 with 1, and then 3 with 2, and only a few with 3. And then we have 2 factions with 23 event wins.
Yeah. If you combine the top 3 factions of event wins with Space Marines, Chaos Demons, and Adeptus and Chaos Space Marines, that is 32 total event wins. Out of how many events have we had total?
Let me just add it together if I can edit
It's
this
like
real quick.
70-ish looking at it.
Yeah, I can just add it real quick. It's not going to take me unless it freaks out. It will just take me a second to do this.
Yeah. It really feels like it is very hard to win an event without being one of a few specific factions. And if we're combining like all of the like the specific Space Marines
it's
together,
100. It's 101.
100. Okay, more than I thought. So like 30% of events are being won by 3 factions, and there are 27 factions in this list.
Yeah.
Which means that average factions should have 4. So there are not a lot of factions that are not getting up to that sort of like 2 to 3 mark that we would expect for the lower play rate factions. No event wins for Thousand Sons, 1 event win for Imperial Agents, nothing for Admech, nothing for Sisters, nothing for Templars, 1 for Cults, 2 for Tau, 1 for Drakari, 1 for Grey Knights, 1 for Votan. These are all very, very low stats, and it's kind of showing a bit of a metagame of you must be this tall to ride the bus. There are factions that can win events right now, and there are factions that are struggle busting or requiring a very, very solid run in order to get to that level of consistency.
I also think we're hitting kind of a point where there just are a lot of factions that just aren't represented very much at the moment. Like we have a bunch of factions that are under 2% at the moment, which seems a little strange, but I'd have to look back at the historical data to kind of track that a little bit closer. That's just my feelings of it, is that there's a lot of factions under 2% currently.
Like there are almost 5 Necron players for every Sisters player right now.
Yep. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. I think that the meta's like mostly okay, but I do think there are some things to look at in it. The fact that we don't have a B tier is very weird.
You can kind of look at from this is that almost every faction had something that it was reasonably competitive on, except the things that are right down at the bottom, right? Like I would feel pretty happy taking a lot of these factions in D and F tier 2 tournaments. I think Death Guard have some solidness builds. Scari's been showing that Drakari can do work. Genestealer Cults, I obviously had the confidence in to take them to Manchester. Thousand Sons of, okay, maybe not Thousand Sons, but Grey Knights Warpbane is still a very good detachment. Votan's been doing great in Germany. There are some Darkon Stormlands builds. Like none of these builds at the bottom are truly awful right now, which is a good sign, right? Like a lot of these DNF tiers are good enough that I think if you really wanted to, you could still play them and still get good results out of them. Maybe the things right at the bottom are not quite there. But we're also moving into a new meta game. We'll hopefully have a balance dataslate coming in the next few weeks. But there are lots and lots of lots and lots of room there for the best lists of these bottom factions to do well, but the faction as a whole isn't proving super healthy. I think that's kind of what the takeaway is that the factions at the top you can kind of read as the best version of these armies. So Legion of Excess, Bridgehead, and Deathwatch, the Index, Blackbeard Task Force are the best things you can be doing if you're capable of playing them. A-tier builds are A-tier armies are like things that you've got multiple strong builds out of. You've got Creations of Bile and Renegade Raiders. Okay, Agents are a bit of an aberration. You've got Solar Spearhead and Shield Host. You've got Star Shatter and Hypercrypt. There's been so many Tesseract Vaults doing well in the UK recently. You've got, and then you've got, a couple of monobuild factions that are doing quite well, but that only have but are fairly monolithic. And then as you move into the lower tiers, it's like you must be playing this one specific build or one or two specific builds to be doing well. And anything that's outside of that isn't competing at the highest level. So I would say things like Death Guard, where you've got like the Plague Company list, like the Plague Storm list that's been popping up in the UK a bit, that's been doing well. But outside of that, not a ton of results for Death Guard. If you're Scari, Drakari are having good results, but not a lot of people outside of that. If you're German and playing Votan, but outside of that, the struggle busting a little bit. So I think it just kind of the further you go down, the more skillful you must be with the army, or the more specific the build is in order to be able to compete, I think.
Yeah. I do think there's a problem with no B tier.
That's
think
fine.
you could
I'm
probably
okay with
move. I think you can move Imperial Knights, Orcs, and Space Marines probably into it.
I think we probably could. I'm not going to.
I mean, we're not going to because I like
if
this.
we're going to use a database structure for this tier list, and then we can't just change it because it looks better.
I know, but it is funny. Also, it shows me a shelf in army performance that I think is actually kind of interesting. That there is just some kind of shelf between kind of like high performing factions and the not as high performing factions, and I think that's really interesting, actually. So that's something we can look at probably moving forward. So here's your. Do you want to make it big, even bigger? I don't know. We'll add it to the StatCheck Discord if you want to get it.
It'll be in the StatCheck Discord if you want to see the full version of it. But yeah, you can take your screenshot.
I ignored a top 10. I don't think so. Maybe I did. I don't really care.
I don't think there were. Yeah, because Tyranids had a bottom 10 and a top 10.
We will quickly sort through it. We'll maybe publish a final version once we've had a chance to.
No, I think it's fine.
Yeah. I don't think anything terribly weird is here. There are a lot of ties for some values.
Yeah, no, I think I'm good with this as it is. As disappointing as it is to not give you guys a B tier. I know that we love a B tier. Blood Angels had a top 10 and a Blood Angels had a top 10 and a bottom 10. They were 19th in overrep and 10th and 8th in win rate, while being in the middle for win rate, which puts them at +1, -1 for a top 10 and a bottom 10, which puts them in the middle.
Yep. That's why they're in the middle, guys. We promise.
Yep.
All right.
That's all I got.
Why don't you do the plugs while I pull up the questions?
Yeah. So if you guys have been enjoying the show, please do remember to do all of the usual interaction things. That's liking, commenting, and subscribing. It's a big help for us with making sure that you guys get that we know what you guys are enjoying, what you guys aren't enjoying from the show. Thank you specifically to everybody who commented with their favorite things that they would like to try to do with the no rule of 3. You can play anything you want, as many epic heroes as you like. I'm going to quickly load that up, and I'll chat a couple of the most interesting ones at the end from what I saw, because there were some really cool ideas. Some ones that we'd already said on the show, which poor reading comprehension is normal among 4K players, so I'm not too worried about it. Otherwise, if you'd like to support us a little bit more, you can check out patreon.com/statcheck or the YouTube membership program below. $5 a month gets you access to our Patreon Discord community, where you can access things like the Vibe Check League. You can access an additional discount code for Red Dragon, or you can just banter, chat, and shit talk with us at any time of day or night, because there's probably someone from StatCheck awake at any time, because we're all just doing weird things. If you would like to support us through one of our sponsors, you can check out Whale and Yutani, you can check out J15 Games, you can check out Saltar Games, and you can check out Red Dragon. All of the links in the description, whether you're looking for terrain, widgets, 4K and board game supplies, or anything in between. One of our sponsors will be able to help you out. J15 Games will do you Widgets and GW Terrain based out of the United States. Will and Yutani will do you WTC official terrain, and Matt's based out of Europe. Saltar Games will do you Widgets and Games Workshop and GW Terrain based out of the UK. And Red Dragon is I'm going to keep calling it the #1 store in Ottawa for your gaming and card game needs, board games and otherwise. That is red-dragon.ca. And thank you also to Dan for coming over to the UK this weekend. It was great to see him again. He brought Scary over to come and try and smash out some UK tournaments, and they both decided to lose games because there are points, they can't have them.
Mm-hmm. All right. The way to get your questions answered on the show are either to join the Patreon and then ask questions in the Patreon thread, which thank you, Risa Darville, for joining the YouTube membership. You can go ask a question in that thread if you want. And thank you, Dan Morris.
Before last that we did the questions thing because I forgot.
It was the week before last. It's fine.
That's fine. I'm not going to do it now then. Too late. I find it in the YouTube Studio app, so it's just not happening now.
Fair. All right. We are going to do questions now. Also, watch the other shows on our network.
Watch the other shows on our network. You can find us live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. GMT at youtube.com/statcheck. And if you'd like to get more help from either myself or any of the wonderful hosts of Take All Comers, or Liam VSL or Nassim Fouchain, or the eponymous Pumbaa, you can check out stat-check.com/coaching, or drop us an email at coaching@stat-check.com. I believe the new web form is live, so you can go to the website and submit a form that will direct you directly to the coach of your choice now. So please do try those things out.
And let us know if they don't work. We can fix them. All right. Tom Pang, formerly Crawford, asks a question, which is, what gardeners do you want to see?
I would like to see Creed get moved to once per battle round for her stratagem, because I don't understand why she's a high turn for 65 points. I would like to see Bridgehead lose some damage output, or Silence go up significantly in points.
Yep.
And I would like to see the Taurox and Chimera go up a bunch. I think transports in general just need to get like a game-wide nerf right now. I don't really know what it is, but I think they just need one. I think things just shouldn't be allowed to get out after transport moves, just like ever.
Mm-hmm.
The rule is bad.
True.
But that's not going away. So just up their points.
I do think every single transport chassis basically should go up in points. Like, it is really funny that a Rhino is as cheap as it is, especially like the new Emperor's Children Rhino, which lets you get out after.
They're so durable for no reason as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Guard just kind of needs some nerfs to their offensive power, essentially.
Oh, and mortars. Like, no, please, can we stop it with mortars?
Mm-hmm. All right. Next up is a question from Bryn, which is, well, that's for Anthony. Where do we rate Emperor's Children in the melee army hierarchy right now? I don't think they're a melee army per se at the moment.
Anthony said that he was a Fulgrim believer in the StatCheck Discord. So I'm going to choose to say that he is at least contemplating experimenting with them in a world where Eldar and World Eaters and Chaos Space Marines Bile exists. That Anthony is at least willing to try Fulgrim right now, and that we will probably get Anthony's strong thoughts on the new army next time we speak to him. But I think Anthony probably thinks Emperor's Children are pretty good.
I will say, I guess looking at them, I didn't really think of them as a melee army, but like more of a mid-range shooting army that's really fast. Is that wrong? Oh, no, I see noise marines everywhere.
I definitely want to smack people in the face with chainswords with crit 5s.
I get it. I just kind of want to drive forward and then sonic weapon people to death with rhinos. That
you can do both. Get you a book who can do both.
Fair. All right. I will do this super chat real quick because that is the other way to get your questions asked in a guaranteed fashion. Thank you, Endymion, for $5 in the super chat. Innes, do you have any tips for learning how to play against a new codex when you don't have friends planning to learn it either to practice against?
My general best bet would be to try writing a list for it and go through it and think, okay, I want to write this faction. How would I approach it? What do I think is good? And then go and compare it to some lists that have done well and think about why their approach differed from yours. So kind of go through and go, okay, well, I wrote this list around these kind of key concepts. Why are people not playing this? Is this because it's bad? Is it because, okay, why are they doing the things they're doing? What's interesting in there? Try these things out, try something, have a look and see what's different. And then potentially try sticking it on the table on TTS, either just play it into yourself, try deploying it a few times, see how it moves, see what the rules look like, have a look at the key interactions that you think are important, and then go from there. That's the best way you can do it without getting a chance to play against it, is to just go and experience as much of it as you can, see what a list look like, see why, think about why things that they're doing are different from what you would have thought to do, and then kind of try to learn the lessons in that, right? If you looked at the Eldar Codex and you were like, wow, I think the best unit here is Wraithguard, and then nobody's playing Wraithguard, maybe you should have a think about, why did you think Wraithguard were good? Why are people not playing Wraithguard? What's more competitive about this? Why is that answering problems that you didn't think of? That kind of thing is how I would try to approach it, and they'll get you to think about the stratagems, the detachments in a specific way, rather than just being like, okay, so I generally understand what Eldar do.
Yep. Also, if you have TTS and don't mind it, you can always get games on TTS. There's always people looking for games on TTS, and you can ask for specific factions to play against. And frequently, people will deliver. Not always,
especially with new codexes. Whenever there's a new codex, people are usually begging for games not against that new codex because they're sick of playing against it. So,
yep. All right. The next question is from Willow, which is: will Imperial Knights ever beat the allegations?
No.
Not even ever.
I don't even know what allegations, but they won't beat them.
True. Nick K is going to ask about the slate, like when slate, where slate, how slate, why slate, red slate, blue slate, and we don't know. We don't know anything about when the slate.
Look, ask the content creators that have NDAs. That is not us.
Yep. McWhirp asks, CK, Demons, and Votan all seem to do well at Pyra. What are us plebs over here in North America missing when we look at these armies?
Apparently 3 Keepers of Secrets. CK, I'm not sure. And Votan, I don't know, man. I don't think they're that good either. But they're clearly doing well in Germany.
It might be terrain as well, guys. Like
it
they're
might
definitely
be terrain. That doesn't feel like it's true. I think people overblow terrain differences a lot in this game. Broadly, I just play the same thing at every terrain format, and it mostly works. But yeah, honestly, I think just lack of top level players willing to commit to the bit of playing Votan is probably the biggest one, and maybe the same with Demons.
I would say if you're interested, just grab some of their lists and try them out. Like, go and test them. Be the change that you want to see in the world.
Yeah, and if you think it's terrain differences, try it on WGC terrain, then try it on GW terrain, and see if it really feels different.
All right, Magnus did nothing wrong. Gave us a 10.99 super chat. Thank you, Magnus did nothing wrong. Do you think adding a secondary like Gangbusters from 8th ITC or a rider on an existing secondary would impact the meta in a significant way? Assuming it would be a fixed option like Cull or Bring It
Down. It would make it would horribly change the meta game. Yeah, it would be insanely different. It would depend how it fixed it or how it changed it. Like if it was terrible, it probably wouldn't change it a ton. But if it was a playable one that punished elite infantry or anything like that, then yeah, it would of course it would significantly change the game. Making it easier to play the game without playing cards promotes very one-dimensional playstyles of I'm going to attempt to score my card, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like if that playstyle is kill you, then it's still pretty interactive. It's not necessarily one-dimensional doesn't mean bad in this instance, but it allows more unnuanced gameplay where your list can be a bit more one-dimensional. It doesn't need to contain game standards. You can just play the game in a more simplified way, and for some lists that will be great, and it will of course change the meta game if you were to do something like that. Do I think it would be a good thing? Yeah, probably. The fact that fixed is kind of bad right now is helping armies play very poorly punished game plans, like ignoring the fact that they give up max assassinate and stuff like that, because what are you going to take with assassinate? Dude, cleanse? Good luck.
Thank you, Prophet Chaos, for the £5 super chat. What's got us placing Black Templars in the trash is that they did real bad.
Yeah, they were 27th in overrepresentation. They were 26th in win rate, and they were 24th in event wins, which is to say they had none. They had a 44% win rate, which was the second lowest, and they had no event wins. So that is what got us putting them in the bottom tier.
Yep. They were bottom 5 in all their categories, essentially. All right. Next up is we've got some questions from Frank. Thank you for putting them all in one post, Frank. I appreciate you, bud. What kind of things does the slate absolutely need to hit, and what's one thing you would like them to address? The things that it absolutely needs to address are Guard and Legion of Excess, essentially. And maybe like things like Space Marines,
Tank Busters.
Watch. Yeah, I think the kill team data sheets need to be addressed a little bit.
Tank Busters, Bridgehead, Legion of Excess, Gollum and Calgar are the things that I desperately want them to address.
Mm-hmm. Other than that, I really would like I would like to see them do stuff for the armies that are currently in the trash tier right now. All those armies could use like a little bit of an assist.
As always, buffing armies at the bottom is a nice to have, not a need to have. Taking the top away is a must be done. Getting the bottom up is a, yeah, dude, it'd be great if it happened.
Yep. And then we got some Emperor's Children questions, which we'll try to answer. What's your initial takes on best detachments? I think that one where you take like bets is the best
Yeah,
one.
Corey is probably the most interesting, and I think it's the most powerful. In any kind of like army like this with Emperor's Children, where you don't get a ton of stuff, the ability to ramp your damage into the late game, even when you start taking really bad attrition, and having like 4 Legionnaires kill a vehicle is really powerful, and definitely where I would like to be for the army. You want to
Yep.
make it so that when your army has started degrading, that you still keep killing things, and it allows you to play with more unchecked aggression, which is what an army like this wants to be doing, in the same way that like Cao Yun does for Tau, where Cao Yun is actually a fairly aggressive detachment. It wants to play quite aggressively because it wants to trade with you, but it can afford to trade down because in trading down, it puts itself in a position where in the late game it becomes unstoppable damage output wise because its dregs beat your dregs.
Yeah. We'll have Anthony when he's next week. He'll answer this question about why he likes Fulgrim so much. We'll make it a point to ask him that question, Frank. Don't worry about it. Do you think the army needs war dogs, or is anti-tank perhaps a bit, or is the anti-tank problem perhaps a bit overblown?
Just hit him in the face, dude.
Yeah. I think if you just point enough sonic guns at things, like the strength 10 will work eventually.
I think there's an argument for the two huntsmen that Anthony's been playing, right? They start the fight, they make your opponent walk out, they make you play court, they make you start getting your court restack going, but I don't think you need them.
Yeah.
They just are an option.
I don't know. This is the last question. I don't know if we have enough games to really talk about it. Also, I played a game as Coterie, and my opponent didn't move to the middle, completely shutting off my detachment rule, making me literally unable to score points. What should Coterie players do against this Galaxy Brain play?
So you know how the objectives are in the middle. Go to those. Stand on the
Just
circles.
stand on the circles. Oh. All right. Next up is Goran, who asks, we'll have to save that question for next week because it's about Anthony's pyro list. We're going to skip all the pyro questions, guys. That's just what we're going to do. Is there data/opinions for the guard codex outside of Bridgehead? The other detachments play a very different game to Bridgehead in my experience. Thank you, Matt Vick, for the £5 super chat.
We've had some initial stuff. Like Hammer of the Emperor has looked not amazing. Again, we had a 33% win rate over the last 2 weeks, and Mechanized looked okay. Dave Gaylord played Mechanized to a 3 wins, 2 draws result at Manchester. So there's definitely like at least some form of power there. I know one of my teammates, Ryan, played Hammer of the Emperor to a 4-1 finish. Like they're perfectly serviceable. I don't think they're as raw powerful as Bridgehead, but they definitely have strong transport mechanics. But Purge the Foe is a mission, unfortunately, that will always cause a problem for that kind of MSU all over the board build.
I do think at some point, once Bridgehead gets nerfed, which it hopefully will, is we'll start to see some more innovation in those spaces as well, and we'll start to see some more lists crop up that we can to be used and tinker with in those areas. I think Mechanized is definitely an army that to look at. Like transports are really good in this edition. An entire detachment that's around transports is going to also be reasonably good as well.
Strongly agree.
Tom Pang asks, when Bruce guest?
I don't know. I'll maybe do an interview with Bruce sometime. He deserves it. He's always worked hard.
Nick has a question. Is there something in common that you found in clients that you've helped have the most success?
The clients that have the most success are the ones that interact the most. And I know that that's like a really obvious thing to say, but the ones that put the most work in external to just being on the calls with each other. Like I can sit on a call with you, or we can play a TTS game once a month, and two calls a fortnight and talk about your games you played and all that kind of stuff. But if you're not putting in the work external to that in terms of like looking at your games and thinking about what you could have done differently and analyzing your own stuff, the more you can bring to the calls that's like second order information where it's already been processed once and we can go through more of it after the fact, the more that we can do together, right? Like if you come to me for a call and we talk about the new balance dataslate that's just happened, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about the balance dataslate and why it matters. That's great. It's a super valuable thing to do. But if you've come to me and you're like, hey, I looked at the balance dataslate and I adapted my list in this way and this way, how do you think that this deals with the current metagame, where you've already done the first steps of it, of understanding the balance dataslate and what's changed? It's much easier for us to go in and go, okay, well, I think under the new situation, this is what's what's changed for you, and this is how we can like look at that in a more interesting way, where there's a second order information. The same thing with game analysis, right? If you rock up and you've taken some pictures of your games, that's great, and we'll go through them and we'll learn a bunch of stuff. But if you've gone through them and you've taken some lessons out and you're like, okay, I noticed that this was the most interesting turn, can we talk about this turn, rather than just being like, hey, describe the game to me and we'll stop when it's interesting. If you go, okay, well, this is the turn that I was most questioning about, this is the turn where I wasn't sure what to do, can we talk about this turn? That's, that post processing analysis where we go into the second step of it is the bit that's always the most that you'll get the most out of.
Next question is from Nick K. What do you think of Zodgrod's unit? Don't see it in many lists, it seems. That's the unit with like the weird.
Yeah, the Zodgrod unit with Scout and Scout 12, by the way, or it's Scout 9 and then it moves 12 when in the water, and it's ridiculously fast. I think it's totally fine, but it does contribute a little bit to like a game plan that orcs are already pretty good at and don't necessarily need more of, which is putting your opponent in a box. Like the army already kind of does that. There are some matches where it's really good and some matches where you're just running it at nothing. And when it doesn't do much, it just kind of sits there. It's also only really good when you go first, which orcs are already quite good at. Which again just kind of puts it in a situation where like it's a tool you can bring, but not a tool you need for orcs.
Fair.
I know Brian was upset he didn't submit it for his tactical brigade list for Manchester after speaking to him a bit, but we'll see how that goes. Because he pulled off the perfect crime. He submitted Darker Jets and then never went to the tournament to prove they're good or not.
Chris Polly has a question, which is, after this weekend, what's everyone's thoughts on Invictor tactical war suits and suppressors?
The Invictor seemed fine. It applied good pressure. It's not super durable, but it has a good melee profile. It's not that expensive, and it has more guns than you think it does. Suppressors were they were okay. They score. They stand places. They're quite fast. They're good at getting around the board. And when you're playing a threat overload style, they're quite far away from you a lot of the time, right? Because they have 40-inch range, which does mean that you often don't have time to deal with that kind of unit. Which means that they were fine. They're 75 points. I had looked at them before. They're quite interesting. But yeah, they're just okay. They benefited a ton from that list having 3 squads of incursors alongside it, which means that they can get to hitting on 3s and they don't necessarily need all those heavily. And their -1 to hit roll is like weirdly annoying in that it does go away if you kill the unit, if you kill the suppressors. But otherwise it lasts through the turn, and that can be frustrating for some of these bigger brickier units that you end up having to shoot guns at them to maximize your damage output, which then minimizes the amount of damage you can actually apply to the stuff that matters in that army.
Yep. The next question is from Seth the Mad Doc, not Talk. I am hunting for a golden ticket this year. I am between team events. Which army would I have the best chance with to snag a ticket in singles? Orcs, Tau, Tyranids, Votan, or Necrons?
Necrons.
I was going to say Orcs, but Necrons is a good one as well.
It's probably Necrons. Like, it's Seth. I assume he's going to need like 6 weeks, or more than 6 weeks. He's going to need a couple months. So Necrons have got the best chance of being good for a longer time. Love you, really, Seth. Yeah, orcs or Necrons, whichever one you vibe with better. Tactical Brigade is messed up. I would probably do Tactical Brigade personally, but I think Necrons have the most like diversity in list options for if you want to find something that fits the way you want to approach the game. Necrons are more likely to have something that does that.
And then Lilithara has a super chat question. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Thoughts on a potential Tormentor jail list for EC? That's the scouting one, I assume. The infiltrating scouting guys.
They don't do very much damage against things that aren't on objectives. They are just AP1 chainswords. I would not be the most excited to try to play that. I think Tormentors are actually the infiltrating ones with all the bolt guns as well. It's Infractors that are the scout ones. So I don't think it sounds that great.
You need like the Chaos Lord
trying.
equivalent. I think they need the Chaos Lord equivalent as well to like kind of hit good damage at all in melee. Kind of a
well, that's the Infractors again, but like the Tormentors are just infantry. I don't even think they get joined by characters.
Fair enough. All right. Next one's from Isaac. Do we have any data slate predictions? I predict that there will be a slate and that it will probably love tap Legions of Excess and Guard.
And hopefully Orcs and Space Marines.
Yep.
And maybe
what armies do you think you are going to play this year going forwards?
I'm probably going to play Genestealer Cults, Tyranids, Chaos Space Marines, Eldar, and Space Marines. My usual 5 plus Eldar.
I think for the rest of the year I'll probably play Eldar unless something changes. If I get more hobby time with work and stuff like that, maybe I'll pick up something else. But if somebody wants to tell me what army I should play, you should post it in the comments, and I will see about picking it up.
Just play Imperial Legions. I hear they're A tier.
I actually have the Imperial Agents Combat Patrol in my closet. I'm not sure that I'll ever assemble it, though. I just don't know.
I don't
If
blame
I
you.
did play Imperial Agents, it probably would just be Imperial Knights with Sisters stuff and Imperial Agents units. That's all. Next up is Bearded Horse. Innis, well put about your game 6 at Manchester. How can the community deal with these issues / problem characters without witch hunting / being toxic?
I think you just have to tell the truth about what happened. You know, there's no need for it to be a witch hunt. But if a game happened, you're allowed to talk about it. That's all there is. The worst thing you could do is not speak about it, right? Like, because if you just leave a lid on something and nothing ever happens, then people will keep getting away with being bad actors and causing problems. The community just needs to kind of be an adult. You know, nobody needs to be getting in Alex Harrison's DMs and dropping him a message and being like, hey, you're, you know, blah blah X, Y, and Z. That's not a thing anybody needs, and anybody who does that, please don't. I don't need you doing that on my behalf. I don't need anybody doing that. It's been escalated to the UKTC. They'll handle it in whatever manner they deem, and I'll handle it in whatever manner I choose. And that's for me to do, not for anyone else. The community just needs to recognize that something has been, you know, once things are started, that's it. The community doesn't need to be involved past that. It's between the people who are involved after that. And then, you know, once people are in that situation where people are, you know, called out and appropriately recognized and anything has been handled, is not giving them the space to do it again. If they keep being bad actors, then, you know, make sure you're enforcing bans. Don't invite them to tournaments. Don't, you know, just keep them out. That's all there is to it. Like, people deserve second chances. People don't deserve fifth chances. I think that's where I'm at with the current situation.
Fair. All right. And somebody asked about Quins. Quins are just in the Eldar Codex. That's just how that works now. Sorry, folks. Truman BB has a question, which is, how often do you alter your deployment plan for a mission? Do you ever deploy units reactively besides infiltrators / scouts, or are you usually just doing the same thing every time?
Oh yeah, 100% you should be deploying reactively. Count your drops. Know how many drops you're putting on the table, how many your opponent putting on the table, which ones are relevant to your opponent, which ones matter this game. I've been talking to a bunch of Tyranid clients recently where it's like, okay, you have Execreens and Maliceptors and Tyrannifexes. Which one of these matters in this game? Okay, it's the Execreens that are most important. Well, then deploy your Tyrannifexes and your Maliceptors first, and then put your Execreens down responsively to the things that matter. Count the drops. See how many can you get away with. Oh, you can do 4 reactively. Which are the most important 2? Okay, you can do 2 reactively. Which are the most important 4? You know, and change it up depending on what it is. Look at what your opponent's doing. Look at the things. If their Vindicators down, put it in the open. I'll use my teammate Bruce as a great example. He was playing the Smoke and Mirrors mission where you get to redeploy a unit each. So he put a squad of Possessed on the line directly in front of his opponent's expansion objective and was like, they're there, I can redeploy them. And his opponent, thinking that he was going to redeploy them, put all of his guns on the other side of the board and was like, well, I don't need to have the answer there because he's going to redeploy them. And then comes around to the Smoke and Mirrors time. Bruce looks at his opponent. He loses the roll off, so he gets to redeploy second. And his opponent doesn't move any of his guns to look at the Possessed. And Bruce looks at it and goes, well, I'm just going to leave them there then. You've not, like, nothing's in range to shoot them. His opponent's, you know, psyched himself out on the redeploys, and that's a totally thing you can do, right? Like, if you're holding your Possessed squad till last, right? If Bruce had just had more drops than him, he could just say, well, I'm leaving this spot for the Possessed the entire time, and his opponent's got to sit there and go, well, what if he puts the Possessed on the line? I've got to make sure I've got answers for that. And then you can constantly wait, and then your opponent gets pulled out of position because you're saving your important units till the end of the game. You know, get better at leaving spots for your things to go and make sure you're taking appropriate options, and you'll get better at playing the game. Don't just deploy in the blind and hope your opponent, deploys completely normally. I also have a very big thing with stuff like infiltrators and scouts. A lot of people deploy them first and just like put them down and then like waiting for your opponent. If your opponent doesn't have a ton of ability to block you or only has one and you have more than one unit, I often like giving my opponent the first drop and making them put their infiltrators down first and then just going completely around them and just going, cool, I'm going to pressure entirely on this side of the board now. Every time I play Bioscientic, some people are like, oh, you won the roll off, and I'm like, yeah, you can have first drop. I don't actually care where my stuff goes. I just want to know where your stuff is when I do my infiltrators. It really depends on like how you're playing it, but get used to losing that roll off because you're going to lose it. And when you win it, sometimes it's worth taking advantage, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's worth letting your opponent screw up, put some stuff into places it shouldn't be, and then taking advantage of that by getting a bunch of slingshot charges off the things they infiltrated forward to block places you were never going anyway.
Aaron Imperialis Knight has a question and has the best animated little avatar thing. Going to several tournaments this year without my friends for once. We always travel together, so I always have a social for before / after events. What would you do if you're solo at an event you haven't attended before?
Message the TO, ask if there's anybody else going. Post on the Facebook group if there's a Facebook group. Asking the Discord for the local store for the store you're going to or the community you're going to if there's anybody else traveling solo that wants to grab a drink the night before. Just do your best. You got to reach out. Otherwise, go. I've gone and seen a film on the night before a tournament before. Just go to the movies. Go get a nice dinner, chill out, go and do something. If there's a local attraction that's worth having a look at, go and do that. Like you're still traveling. Go and do something. Right? You're on holiday. Go and enjoy yourself.
Yep.
Or make new friends if that's a thing that works for you.
If you like socializing, go make new friends. Go say hi to Innes. That's what you should do. If you're at an event with Innes and don't know anybody else, go say hi to Innes.
I know Aaron's in Scotland, so yeah, come say hi to me. It's fine. I only bite occasionally.
Just if you get too close to his Dino Nuggies.
100%.
Gustavo has a question. Gustavo has a question. It says, "Hello, you said you would like to see some experimentation in Guard. Have you seen anything particularly stand out, unit/build wise, that people are overlooking because of Bridgehead?"
I think Mechanize is really good.
Yep. I was going to say Chimera is probably even more so. I actually think the Lehman Russ battle tank is just fine, and people could just use it more. People use a lot of Rogaldorn commanders, I think, at the moment in their place, and I think like the basic ass Lehman Russ battle tank is still good.
Full rerolls is pretty strong, as it turns out. We've seen some decent stuff with Vanquishers and a few other things. Yeah, nothing too crazy, but try some things. I don't think Recon is going to be it, but maybe there are some other things out there that are worth some experimentation, and I would definitely give it a shot.
Yep. Thinking Hammer or maybe the Mechanized Assault one are probably like the two directions. But
yeah, the fact that Hammer lets you randomly go through engagement range of enemy models is quite funny.
Yep.
It makes it really quite hard to move block randomly, which is one of my favorite things.
Beep, watch out for my tank.
Yeah, you're just like a Torx is just like driving through a gap between models. You're like, what on earth is going on?
All right. Next up is Ruben, who's asking, how would you guys buff Grey Knights?
Ruben, you don't need Grey Knight buffs. You know you don't need Grey Knight buffs. Stop asking for Grey Knight buffs. How would I buff Grey Knights?
I don't think Grey Knights need buffs. I think they're fine.
I think Grey Knights are fine too. I really feel like you just gotta like keep nuking the Dread Knight and give some more stuff to the infantry. I think you could give the infantry an invulnerable save. You could maybe give them a point of strength in melee, maybe. Like I think there are a bunch of things you could do to make the infantry a little more interesting. But I think Grey Knights on the whole are pretty good. Maybe Terminator. Terminators, I really feel like the base Terminator could hit on 2s, and it wouldn't be that crazy.
I think so too. I think you could give some like little tweaks. They don't need like big buffs or anything, but like a little tweak is like just
let
enough.
Paladins have an apothecary, maybe. Little things like that.
Jim Beans in chat is making me laugh internally that they just wrote 19 pages for Eldari. That's funny. JH has a question, which is, any advice for playing with 110 Neos faster?
Yeah, know what you're doing. Know your weapon profiles. Don't spend too long thinking about where they're going. Just fire the guns quickly and move on. Don't get bogged down too much in getting your policy consolidations perfect. Just get them good enough without cheating to put them where you roughly need to be and worry about it later. Focus on getting your charges down, and then don't worry about the policy consolidations. Don't try to do too much shenanigans until you're a bit more confident with it, or know where it's really important to get that stuff perfect, and then get a good cadence down for where you're putting your banners and your characters at the back of your units, and then stick with that. Don't spend too much time doing it. If your opponent argues with you every step of the way, your army's going to take forever to play. So do your best to have a good rapport with your opponent of making sure that they know you're not cheating, that they trust you to do this stuff. Because if you don't, the game is going to get very difficult very quickly.
All right. The next question is from Jonathan, which is, are units like Space Marine Scouts generally better as early sacrifice pieces to score early area denial/establish locus, or saved for late game strat reserve nonsense?
As always, what does your army need? Does your army need early sacrificial scoring pieces? Then Scouts are great at that. Does your army need late game strat reserve nonsense? Scouts are great at that. If your army has 37 units in it, you probably don't need more late game score. You probably don't need more early sacrificial scoring pieces. Keep them for late game when you've used them. If your army needs to apply a ton of pressure early, you have a lot of units that can pick up the late game slack for you by just being alive, then use them for early sacrificial and get the game started. Just it's always contextual to what the game is. If your opponent's got a bunch of scouting world eaters and Votan, they're probably going to be an early sacrificial scoring piece. If your opponent's playing a slow sit back in their deployment zone army, they're probably going to be a late game piece because your opponent's not going to apply a ton of pressure to you, so you don't need to do a ton to them, and you can score your secondaries while you're staging up. It's always contextual to what your opponent's doing.
And I saw Aaron both post and then delete a question, and it was just about, are there activities associated with socials at LGT?
Not usually. Most stuff is people independently doing their own stuff. There's like usually some stuff on like the Friday night. There might be like a pub quiz and stuff like that. But yeah, it's very varied.
I would say go look at the UKTC channel on StatCheck. People tend to do meetups and threads there and talk about who is going to be there. And
we definitely just grabbed Logan and took him to dinner with us on the Saturday night at Manchester.
Yeah, it's just how you'll get dragged into things. So, Aaron, if you're watching this, which I think you are based on the fact that you just commented in the questions thread, you should go use the UKTC thread to help you with organizing things for yourself if you want to be social at events. Then Jonathan DeLeo asks, has a $10 super chat. Thank you for the super chat. Hi, StatCheck team. First of all, you are by far my favorite 4K content team.
It's true that's the resolution he's watching us in. That's probably true.
I assume so. Second, I'm playing my first GT this weekend. I am bringing Tau Rep Cadre. Any advice on time management? Love y'all. Thank you.
Yeah, the thing that takes the longest with Tau is usually planning out your guides and spots. So make sure that you've got a good cadence for doing that, right? Like bring 2 dice and have a tracker of I need this many guides and this many spots in my movement phase, and have it all pre-planned when you're moving your stuff. Don't just kind of like roll with it as you're going through your shooting phase, right? Plan it as you go, and then you don't have to spend a ton of time thinking about it. Make sure you know your weapon profiles. The biggest thing I would recommend is like have a set of dice that you've got, right? Like if you've got a breacher team that fires out 30 shots, have a pile of 30 dice that you don't take from, right? 30 red dice, 30 blue dice, and then use the 30 blue dice for everything else. And then when you come back to doing your breacher team, you got your 30 red dice sitting there ready to go, and just roll those. Add blue dice in for sustained hits, pull them out, right? Stuff like that. Just get into good habits with things like that, and you'll usually find that once you're in the flow, it's pretty easy to kind of keep going with that.
Makes sense. And that is all of our questions for today, Ines.
Well, that is everything then. So thank you so much to everybody who's been with us so far. We have at some point we had I think like 240 viewers. You guys love a tier list, as we well know, which is why we keep making them. As always, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and do all the things below. If you enjoyed the tier list format and you're looking forward to seeing the Balance Dataslate takes, when the Balance Dataslate drops within the couple of days after it, we'll have a Balance Dataslate reaction episode, as we always do. It'll probably be, as usual, myself and Jeremy. I hope everybody's had a great time. Good luck if you're at any tournaments. And if you want to drop a message about anything that's we talked about this episode, patreon.com/statcheck is the best place to do that. We'll be happy to talk about anything that we chat about on the week.
We have one last thing.
We have one last thing that Nathan's going to do because it drives me nuts, but it's there to be done.
So if you join at the Chris Pie 5 tier of Patreon, we will thank you at the end of every episode. You get to customize your call out because we are crazy and let you all do that. And thus far, it has worked out because I read them a little bit beforehand and try not to read anything that will get us canceled. But if you give us $15 a month, enjoy the Chris Pie 5 tier, you get that. And then a number of other benefits in person, like challenge coins and stuff like that. So here we go. Thank you to Christopher. Still can only hold 1 die at a time. Irvine. Thank you, Willow Weeks. Thank you, Dan F. Thank you, Luke, Dan F. McCarthy. Thank you, David. 6 Rogaldorns is a legitimate list. Clark. Thank you, EIEI Ear. God damn it, I Ear. Thank you, James H. Thank you, Colton, Dan F. Miller. Thank you, Fungus. Thank you, John V8 Gang. Have you or a loved one been affected by the recent expansion of chapters of the local Eldar Union? Call now to join a class action suit and reclaim your turns as wholly your own. That's really good, actually. Thank you,
Look,
Cam.
man, Overwatch still exists. We're not getting it back.
Thank you, Cam, Fdan, Morton, Hog emoji. Thank you, Archon Rahal. The correct way to hobby your brain is to model and paint the cat to look like pickles. Discuss. There is no discussion. That's just the truth. Or you can also, or you can use your own cat. That is also okay.
As a non-cat haver, it'll have to be Anthony's.
That's fair. Thank you, Josiah Gattle. Thank you, Tank Commander Frankie. Thank you to Isaac. Guys, please don't play GSC unless you're bad. I want to win an event with them before they get nerfed to Rada. Based on our stats today, maybe they won't get nerfed. Maybe everything will be fine. Thank you, Thomas. Playing Skrillex in the Rhino Vercoision. Thank you. I'm one of the cool kids that lost to Slanesh now. Thanks, Liam VSL. Thank you, Eldar Local 131. Join now to ensure your right to all turns employment. Thank you, Tom Malachi McKayson. His overly aggressive Scottish accent H. Thank you to Imperial Knights finishing first and second at an event after the book got delayed is exactly the kind of petty revenge I live for, along with super heavy walkers having true line of sight at all times. And thank you to Thanks for all the stats. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Bye-bye.
Too early. Yep, there you go.